talk about in this part of the film is how to use a radial arm saw and some of its safety rules. You can see that I have an unfinished hit-and-miss 4/4 piece of red oak here. And you can see that it's kind of, well, maybe you can't see, but if I show it down its length, you can see it's not the straightest board in the world, but that's how a lot of the lumber that you get out of a wood room or from the mill is going to be until you, the woodworker, mill it or surface it. Well, this is the first step in the milling process, if you will. And what I would do first is I'd check the ends for any defects or splits. Okay? If there were defects or splits, I would remove them gradually until I remove those little defects or splits. And then I would my 26 inches and make a mark, and then I would cut that mark. But before I do that, I want to make sure that the equipment that I'm about to use is operational and safe. All the saws, all the radial arm saws in the district are required to have what's called a recoil or a pulley of some sort that pulls the saw back. It's located right here. This radial arm saw has it. This radial arm saw has it. What you want to make sure is that you can pull the handle and that the saw will go back on its own. It's a heavy saw. Okay, I'm very close. What you don't want is you don't want to make sure it's out here and get stuck. Okay? Another thing that I don't like to see with the radial arm saw is I don't like to see, this is not a handle. This is what is called an anti-kickback or fingers. These are dogs that you're using a ripping operation. This saw in this lab in the Clark County School District in this shop is used for cross-cutting only. It's not a rip saw. Okay? The rip saw is a table saw. We'll talk about that later. This is not the saw to use for ripping. In other words, I would not take this lumber. You can clearly see that the grain is running along the length of the board. I would not take this saw and try and accomplish this maneuver. Bad idea. Number one, I'm in the safety margin, the safety zone. What is the safety zone? It's 6 inches from either side of that blade. What it means is I cannot put my hands from this side of the blade 6 inches or this side of the blade 6 inches. That's the saw's territory, not my hands. That's the margin of safety. It's a cross-cutting saw only. What about small pieces that I cross-cut, that are cut off the end of this board? What about them? Is there a chance of ricocheting lumber over here? Absolutely. Because of the rotation of the blade, you can see the blade, the teeth are pointing away from the operator. You take small pieces and can throw them violently against the wall. That's why we must at all times have our safety glasses on. And you must be aware of small pieces being thrown back there or the possibility of that happening. Okay, so let's demonstrate it. Turn on the saw, have my piece. I'm going to mark it out 26 inches. I've checked the end. Well, let's say that there's a split right there. Oh, man, I need to get rid of that split. So I turn on my saw.
What I'm going to do is go ahead and make this cut at the end of the board. I'm going to go ahead and make sure I grab the radial arm saw by its designated handle, not by the hold down dogs. Make the cut just far enough to where the blade cuts through the outer edge of the workpiece, the wood, and turn off the machine. Slide the workpiece away from the spinning blade. Wait for the machine to come to a complete stop, and then I will proceed from there.
You'll notice that this is still in the red zone and that I didn't reach for it. I like my hands more than this piece of wood.
The radial arm saw has a few safety questions that you need to be aware of on the test. First of all, is the margin of safety is 6 inches. It's used for cross-cutting only, never used to rip. You keep the edge of the board up against the fence and flat against the table, and you need to maintain complete control over the rate of feed due to the fact that the radial arm saw has a tendency to self-feed itself.